Hello, hello, hello. It's Alessandra. Look, I am finally here. I jetted in straight from work, y'all, so bear with me. Bear with me. Welcome back. We are here for session 4 of the Ready, Set, Sterilize Study Hall Series. We've met for the last 3 Mondays. This is our fourth Monday together. We're just doing a general overview of some of the key core topics inside of the CRCST exam. Also, should translate to CBSPD, but again, I've never taken that exam, so I can't say that per se. Just to say, CBSPD and HSPA both offer a basic level certification exam to get you ready to be a sterile processing technician in the healthcare space. So, that being said, I thought it would be great after our Hillman Talk class to offer you guys a study hall space. And so that's what we're doing here today. Hello, Lucinda. Hello. And thank you so much for being patient with me today. As I saw girl flew in from the job. Okay. So give me just a second to get the TikTok folks up with us. And then we're going to get started. Today we're going to be going over a few. I think I have 3 chapters outlined for us to go over, and then of course any questions that you guys have in the in between, you're more than welcome to ask. I know it's been about a week since we were together, right? We met last Monday, so if there's anything that has come up for you during your study since the last time we met, and you want to ask about it, definitions that you need help with, anything you need, guys, truly, it's your hour. Okay. All right, I'm getting the TikTokies up, and then we're good to go. So, Lucinda, I'm going to get my notes up on the screen, and then we're going to get started. We don't need that. We want this. Oh, wait. I opened up session 3. I need session 4. Here we go. There we go. So with the CRCST exam, I do still highly recommend that you guys go over to the My HSPA website and make sure that you download their CRCST certification handbook. That handbook is not necessarily a study guide, but what it will do, what it will do is it'll give you an outline of the key areas that they're going to be going over. So it helps you figure out where to study, where to really focus your study time. Okay. So that's just, again, recommendation on my part. It was something that I had the Hillman Talk students do to start the class, was to go over to My HSPA. I know some people are also taking the CBSPD exam, but they have one too. You can go to the CBSPD website and download their sterilization guide, their handbook, and that will tell you the percentages of sterilization, decontamination, prep and pack, and so on and so forth that are going to show up on the exam, and it's going to tell you how they're grading it. Okay, so just again, another study tool to help you guys get ready. All right, I got my notes. I appreciate you. I see y'all over on TikTok. If you don't mind tapping the screen, TikTok loves that in their algorithm. And over on YouTube, make sure y'all like the live. Share the live with someone if you could, if there's anybody you know that might be interested in studying for this exam. Okay, we got our notes up. I also made a little cheat sheet for you guys that goes over the different type of indicators. So if you noticed in your reading, it lists out your indicators by class. Anybody notice that? It says class 1, class 2, class 3. So I put together a little guide for y'all that breaks down what's class 1, class 2, class 3, and so on and so forth. One of the coaching clients that I have right now requested that information, and so now I have that product available for y'all. All right, share screen. That should be it. There's that. So let me get back up to the top. Okay, so we finna get started. I see over on TikTok, I'm studying for the August exam. Okay, perfect. So you're taking the CBSPD exam. I know you've been hanging out with me long enough to know this, but just because there's new people always coming in, I am CRCST certified. I got my certification through HSPA. So HSPA and CBSPD are both nonprofit groups that offer certification for sterile processing technicians. Both exams and certifications are accepted internationally. Okay. So you can work at any hospital pretty much worldwide. They should honor your CBSPD or your CRCST. Doesn't matter which one you get. Now, key differences between the two, because there are some key differences, not necessarily in content, because the content should be the same as preparing you to be an SPD tech. But when you have one, so for instance, for my friend on TikTok, when she passes her test in August, okay, we're going to speak it into existence. She will then be certified for 5 years, and CBSPD will require her every 5th year to recertify. I would highly suggest you take a look at what that is before you get into it, okay? Because it doesn't mean that she can just kick her feet up for 5 years. CBSPD has requirements that she be working in the field, she be doing continuing education credits and so in services and so on and so forth. All of that is stuff that she will need to keep organized and documented with her for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, because in year 5, she's going to submit her points, submit her work history, and be recertified with CBSPD. Now, as a former sterile processing manager, I did 8 years in frontline management. Let me say this. I always told people to go ahead and get the CRCST only because it makes you recertify every year and you only have to get 12 continuing education credits. And I only ever said that because every so often I would have a CBSPD technician come in my office and say, "Oh my God, Ms. Alessandra, I need my in-service records from 1988. Can you help me?" No, I can't. Now, that being said, a lot of what we do these days is on tracking systems, so your bosses probably can look back and get information for you. But I just want y'all to remember this. Remember this. It is your certification to maintain, period. Nobody else is responsible for you recertifying your certification, okay? That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. So have a process for yourself, have a method on how you're going to keep track of this stuff. Because even for CRCST with myhspa.org, you're going to have to turn in those 12 continuing education credits. So you want to keep those if you're gathering them throughout the year. Now, if you like the average knucklehead where you wait until they send you that letter and tell you got 30 days, now you on the computer trying to search and Google for free CEUs and you doing them at the last minute, that's on you. I didn't live both lifestyles. The stress of it all, I would recommend you just keep track, okay? All right. First, I'm fighting for my life to get them hours. I'm saying, and you're gonna fight. All right. Okay, so let's get started. We are on session 4 of the Ready, Set, Sterilize Study Hall Series. As I said, I'm CRCST focused, so that's where I'm going to focus, but this should still help you guys with CBSPD because we're covering basic concepts in sterile processing. I'm airing this live on YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook, so from wherever y'all are, I say hello, and I ask that you interact with the page, whether that's liking, sharing, commenting, whatever it may be. I'm offering this free for you, and that is an energetic exchange. I think that is easy for you guys to offer onto me. This session overview, we're going to be exploring the science, the types, and the verification of sterilization, okay? Because not all sterilization is the same. We have, in a basic category, we have high temp and we have low temp. But in order to do those two methods, there might be different chemicals and sterilants involved. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And as I said earlier, we're going to also take a look at how do you verify that? What is an indicator? And how do you use it? Okay, so monitoring tools will be a big part of how we talk about how we ensure patient safety. Because if you've been here more than 5 minutes, you know I told you. You can't climb into the sterilizer with the instruments and look around and see is the machine working right and did all the sterile and touch all the instruments, right? You ain't got it like that. If you go in there, you're not coming back out. And I do want to say this in a serious tone. That has happened in our field, okay? These are large machines that we're dealing with. People have lost their lives handling sterilizers incorrectly, okay? Or handling sterilizers that are malfunctioning. So what you're learning both in the classroom and when you get on the floor, I want you guys to remember those are big pieces of equipment. They can be deadly. It's not a common thing, but it can happen. So you want to make sure you're using your stuff properly, okay? All right, and then just a quick recap. I know I'm a little behind on today. For session 3, we talked about decontamination. We talked about the chain of custody of a tray and how you decide, how do you think about your task as a sterile processing technician? I asked you guys a lot of questions like, if I come to you and decontaminate and I bring you a tray that hasn't been used, what do you do with it? Now, if you're not a trained technician, you might say, oh, go ahead and take it straight back to processing. You guys didn't use it. Just take it straight back there, package it up, and we'll throw it in the sterilizer. But y'all are trained. So y'all know better. That once I break that chain of sterility and I cause an event-related incident and I break that sterile barrier, that tray starts its life cycle all over again. It's got to be cleaned. It's got to be inspected. It's got to be sterilized in that order and only in that order. Okay, so that's just a general recap of what we covered on session 3. And as I said, this is y'all study session. So if you have specific questions, drop them in the chat. If you don't already, you should have your notebooks ready. I guess I shouldn't have to tell you that. You're getting free information. Take a note. Okay. If you are using your flashcards, if you hear new terms today, make a flashcard. All right. If I see enough of them in the chat, I'll make some for y'all and send them out on email, okay? And then lastly, I just said that. If you guys have unfamiliar terms, just drop them in the chat. Okay, so our focus today is going to be how does sterilization work? How do we test that it's working? And what can go wrong when we're dealing with sterilization? And my test-taking tip for you guys on this section, pay attention to parameters. If you are trying to be a sterile processing technician and I say parameters to you and you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay, but don't take that test. You're not ready, okay? Parameters are going to be the conditions that let you know how your machine is functioning or how your environment is functioning. So I might ask you, what are the environmental parameters for decontam? And you should be able to tell me what temperature range that room has to stay in, how many air exchanges that room has to have per hour, how many, what else? What type of humidity is in that room, like how much moisture is in the air? Because think about it like this. We're doing surgery. We're gonna have cautery pins. We're gonna be cauterizing your skin, burning your skin. If I have a room that I'm operating in and the humidity is so low that if I spark something, it could catch fire, do you want to be the patient on that table? Not me. And that has happened. Again, not to scare you or not to make it seem like it happens all the time, but we have had patients catch fire in the operating room because rooms were out of parameter, okay? So you're going to see parameters as far as environmental conditions, but today we're talking about parameters as far as your sterilizer equipment. And what that looks like is in order for you guys to sterilize something, in order for you guys to kill all of the germs that are available on a surface, you're going to have to do one or two things. You're either going to have to get that sucker so hot that no germ on it can live, or you're going to have to expose it to chemicals that kill it. That's your two options, okay? High temp or low temp. High temp, steam that's super hot. Low temp is going to be some form of chemical sterilant that doesn't have to get so hot. Okay, think like a bleach. If I were to leave something in bleach for several hours, over time, that would go from disinfection, which is killing a little bit of my germs, to sterilized, where there's nothing left alive on that thing. Okay? So when you put something into the sterilizer, those parameters are going to look like what temperature is that machine at? It's also going to look like what chemical sterilant are you using? Is it steam? Is it hydrogen peroxide? Is it ethylene oxide? Right? And it's going to look like how much time do you have to keep it what we call exposed. So if you guys went through the Hillman Talk class, you remember me talking about surface wet times. So this is where let's say I'm in my kitchen, I'm wiping down my counters, I'm disinfecting. I got my Lysol spray, my bleach spray. What do y'all use? In our house, we use vinegar and water, a little mixture of vinegar and water. But I know a lot of people use bleach. A lot of people use, different types of disinfectants. But no matter which one you use, they all work the same in that it takes time and exposure to kill the germ. So when you spray the bleach on the surface, you can't just immediately wipe it up. That's too fast. It didn't have time to make contact and kill. If you flip over any of your disinfectant bottles, what you will see is it has a term on there that says contact time. And it will tell you it has to be on the surface wet for 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it is. It will also tell you what germs get killed based on how long you leave the surface wet. And so I'm totally making this one up right now. But let's say I got a bottle of bleach, which if y'all at home, so y'all can go grab one right now and look and study along. If you turn that bottle over, it's going to tell you in 1 minute, I'm going to kill this germ, this germ, and this germ. 2 minutes, I'm going to kill all of that and these. 5 minutes, I'm killing everything I see. Okay, so it's going to have that information for you on the bottle, and that is a parameter of sterilization. So I would need to know, like, let's see that bleach had to be at 32 degrees in order for it to be effective. That's one of my parameters. Then I need to keep an environment at 32 degrees. If it tells me that I have to use it for 5 minutes in order to achieve total sterilization, then I know that one of my parameters is going to be a 5-minute exposure in order for me to achieve sterilization. Okay. So let me know in the chat, does that make sense? What a parameter is. All right. So then when it comes to sterilization, when we're talking about high temp, low temp, you guys are going to be dealing with moist heat. When we're talking about high temp, that's steam, okay? You can think about like an old school pressure cooker, or when you're boiling a pot of water and you have the steam coming off. That steam that's coming off of the top of that pot, we use that in our healthcare field in order to kill germs on your kill microorganisms on your surgical instruments, okay? So most machines will have a baseline of about 275 degrees. Let's see if I can make that bigger for y'all so y'all can see that a little better, YouTube. And TikTok, if y'all want to see the notes, they are over on YouTube. I think if I scoot in, okay, let's see how that shows up for y'all. Oh, yeah, that's better. Okay, so when it comes to steam, we call that a moist heat, okay? A moist heat sterilization. And it does so by being at a high temp. Most machines are going to baseline around 275 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, that being said, all machines are different, so you're always going to be looking at your IFU to find out exactly what that is. You're also going to be looking at your instructions for use when it comes to your surgical instrument. That's going to tell you if it needs to go high temp, low temp, and what its parameters are, okay? Just like that bleach bottle is going to tell me I need 5 minutes. You might have another surgical instrument that says it needs 7 minutes of exposure, and you have to meet that. You can't shortcut it. So next, let's talk about how steam sterilization works. We have two different what we call displacements, and that is how do we get the air out of this machine, right? So we talked about a pressure cooker. I then pushed all my instruments into this machine. How do I get the air out so I can get the sterilant in? There's two ways that happens in SPD. You got two different machines. One is a gravity displacement sterilizer, and the other one is a dynamic air removal or pre-vac sterilizer. Those will be on your test, okay? You want to have a flashcard for both types of sterilizers so you know the difference. The basic difference between gravity displacement and dynamic air removal are in the names. Gravity displacement, we got that pot, right? We're thinking about it, a sterilizer as a pot of boiling water, even though it's a really big machine, okay? Much, much bigger than that. But we're thinking about it right now as a pot of boiling water. And I know I got some moms in here, so if I tell y'all I'm boiling bottles, y'all know what I'm talking about, okay? We're going to boil some bottles. I put my pot of hot water on the stove. I get it up to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I want to capture that steam, but my pot is full of water. How do I get only the steam to touch the bottles? I got to get the water out. What a steam sterilizer that uses gravity displacement is going to do is it's going to push air into the top of that pot or sterilizer and move all of that air, and in our example, water, but move all of that air out of the machine. It pushes it down using gravity, and then as it pushes all the air out, it pushes steam in. Okay, so now I don't have air flowing back in because I'm pushing down with my air coming down and I'm pushing in steam. That's gravity displacement. Okay, you're using gravity to displace the air inside the sterilizer. You're using gravity to push the air all the way down to the bottom of the machine, and there's some vacuums and stuff that will help. There's some hoses and stuff that it's going to flow out of, right? Okay, that's gravity displacement. Another way you can do this with steam sterilization is what we call dynamic air removal or pre-vacuum. The way this one works is in the name. Before the cycle starts, when you push the instruments into the sterilizer and you press start, before it starts giving any type of sterilant, it's going to pull a pre-vacuum. It's going to pull a vacuum. Think about anytime, like let's say I have a vacuum and I have a balloon full of air, right? If I connect the vacuum to the balloon full of air, what's going to happen? The vacuum is going to suck all the air out of the balloon. Same concept for pre-vac sterilization. The sterilizer is going to suck all of the air out of the machine and then introduce your steam sterilant. Okay, so same type of sterilization. It's still steam sterilization, moist heat sterilization, high temp sterilization. It's all those things. But how it achieves it is different based on the machine that you're using. Gravity displacement pushes it down. Dynamic air removal sucks it out. Okay. And then with this, the parameters for your sterilizers are going to be the same no matter what type of sterilizer it is. High temp, low temp, gravity displacement, pre-vac, don't matter. Your critical parameters are going to be the same. It's going to be the time that your instrument is exposed to sterilant. It's going to be the temperature of that machine. Because again, if it's high temp, I need to know that it's above 275 degrees. If it's low temp, I need to know that it's below, I want to say 40, but don't quote me. I need to know those things though. So the time and the temperature are going to be critical parameters. The pressure of the machine. Think about a pre-vac. If it's pulling all that pressure and my gauges are going crazy and it's building up too much pressure, the door about to pop off, I don't know that if I can't read a pressure gauge, right? So the pressure in that machine is going to matter to me. That's going to tell me whether or not that machine is working properly. That's going to be a key indicator for me, a key parameter. Because again, I can't get in there and look. If I get in there and look, I ain't coming back out. The last thing is going to be contact. Now, when it comes to contact as a parameter, this is not something that you guys are going to necessarily be able to measure and test, but it is something you need to keep in your mind about how you package a sterilizer load. Now, what am I talking about? Okay, let me find a couple of little things to use. So both of these rolls of towels are going to be my instruments. I got one stainless steel instrument. I got two. I'm your sterilizer. If I put them in there and I put them right next to each other, I'm getting sterilant all over here, but I'm not getting no sterilant touching in between. So contact is a parameter, because if I push these into the sterilizer like this and I let the whole cycle run, my parameters are going to show that sterilization was achieved. I'm going to have the right time. I'm going to have the right temperature. I'm going to have the right pressure. But because of my training as an SPD tech, I know that this part right here is compromised. So how do I handle that as an SPD tech? Well, I know because I took these classes. When I put these two things into the sterilizer, they have to have some space between them. They cannot be touching each other. I have to leave space in between all of my packages so my sterilant can flow 360. I want it everywhere. Okay? Now, rule of thumb, and this is an old school thing. I don't even know if they got it in a book no more. I've been in the game too long. We use the finger width as a rule. So let's say I'm packing multiple trays into the sterilizer. I want to be able to at least slide my fingers between the two. And they literally can be right up against my fingers, but they got to have that space between them, okay? That's going to allow for the sterilant to pass between the two. Now, when you have, it would look something kind of like that. That makes sense? So if I got two boxes sitting next to each other, I should have that space between them. That makes sense? So the sterilant can come through. Now, that being said, you might also have smaller packages like pill packs that won't need as much space, but they still need space. So you wouldn't be able to smush those together either just because they're small. You need some distance. Might not be a finger width for them, but some distance between the two. Okay? Any questions on that? Loading a sterilizer is something that once you learn the rules of it, it's just like Tetris after that. You learn that I can't put my wrap trays underneath my metal trays because my metal trays will get hotter. They're going to condensate more. They're going to pool water. I'm going to have water pooling all over my wrap trays. So I learned, and a lot of your IFUs will tell you, that I can't put my wrap trays underneath my metal trays. I know now that all of my trays have to have space between them, right? So those are things that once you learn them, you'll be doing them on the floor second nature. But especially for your tests, those critical parameters are going to pop up somewhere. Okay. All right. Study notes. Steam sterilization is the most common method for heat-stable instruments. And the good majority of your surgical instruments are going to be heat-stable instruments. That being said, you will be dealing with instruments on a daily basis that are not heat stable, like cameras and scopes that cannot handle high temperatures, and that if you put them into the steam sterilization, they're going to melt. And I've seen it done. And baby, let me tell you something. I don't think as a tech or a manager I ever had worse days than when somebody melted my surgical instruments in a machine. I remember one time being a baby tech. I was probably tech 2, and I was training somebody else with a friend of mine. And that young man, he put that stuff in that steam sterilizer, baby. And when we opened it up, them pill packs was just it. It was embarrassing for me to have to go back to my manager and say, I'm so sorry, but these are melted and we can't use them anymore. But also when I switched over into management, it became even more critical because I learned how much that stuff cost. Okay. And we all make mistakes. So don't freak out too much. You would be hard pressed to find a technician that has not ruined some piece of equipment before, whether it's a machine or a surgical instrument. But that being said, just do keep in mind to pay attention because once you break it, you can't get it back. And a lot of this stuff is very expensive, but also a lot of this stuff is specialty. And it's not, I tell my surgeons all the time, these surgical instruments are not sold at Walmart. If you break it today and you need it tomorrow, I might not be able to get it for you tomorrow. I might be able to get it to you on Thursday, but I might not be able to get it to you tomorrow. So that's something else to think about, guys, is that your patients are counting on you to take care of this equipment so that it's available to them when they come in and they need it. And oftentimes when a patient needs equipment, it was something that they didn't have an opportunity to pre-plan about, okay? They just found out they broke that knee and they on their way. All right, so last little study note about steam sterilization, your condition. So these are the parameters. You have that. We talked about temperature. You got to hit at least 270 degrees Fahrenheit. This may change based on your instructions for use for each individual machine. But for your test, it's going to be a basic 270 degrees Fahrenheit or 132 degrees Celsius. I would recommend that you be able to recognize it both ways. Okay. Now, I don't know about y'all. I cannot convert. Thank you. I appreciate it. I cannot convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. So I wrote my note with both of them on there. Okay. For exposure time, most steam sterilizers are going to have a basic exposure of 4 minutes. Somebody in the chat tell me, what does that mean? If I say that the sterilizer is going to expose the instruments for 4 minutes, what does that mean? Somebody tell me in the chat. Okay. And then lastly, usually these sterilization cycles are about 30 minutes long between pushing in the air or displacing through the gravity, exposing to sterilants, and then drying those instruments from the time you press start to the time it finishes. They're going to be somewhere roughly in that range of 30 to 90 minutes, depending on the machine. Okay. I would say an average cycle is about 90 minutes long. Key terms for this section: steam sterilization. It kills via protein coagulation using high temp moist heat. What does that mean? Protein coagulation. All of the proteins in your blood, everything that makes your blood alive, that's what that steam is going to kill. Okay. Dynamic air removal. That's that type of steam sterilization that uses a vacuum to remove air before the steam is injected into the machine. Okay, before the steam is introduced. And lastly, a term that we didn't talk about in our notes today, but that I do want you to be aware of, is the conditioning phase. Okay, conditioning phase might not come up on your test, but just so you're aware. That's going to be the period when the air is removed and the steam enters the chamber. Okay. So whether it's gravity displacement or it's a pre-vac, your conditioning phase is going to come next. And that's that space in between where the air has been moved out and the steam is being pushed in. Conditioning phase. Test taking tip. If a question asks for a preferred method for heat tolerant instruments, the answer is always going to be steam. Okay, so if you have the ability to put it in a high temp or put it in a low temp, or if you have the ability to put it in pre-vac or put it in gravity displacement, the answer is still going to be steam. Okay, it's usually faster. That's why they'll usually go with it. All right. And then leadership skill focus for this, because again, you guys are going to be certified technicians for sterile processing. You will have leaders, you will have managers, but you will have to think on your own. You will have to be a self-starter. So I embed leadership skills into anything that I teach. You're learning right now how to think in a system. You're learning how the system works. What are the stages of the system? And what is going to affect the outcomes, right? So even with this basic understanding that we have right now of steam sterilization, let's say I was to tell y'all that I had a wet pack. I had a wrapped tray that has water on the top of it. Just from this class right now, one of the things you guys can tell me if you have learned the system of sterilization is that, I don't know if she did it for sure because I didn't see it, but she might have put some metal trays on top of her wrap instruments that caused condensation and pulled on top of her wrap trays. The book is not going to say that to you straight out. The book is teaching you what the systems and the phases are. You're learning how to think about it in a system. Another example is that one we used about that life cycle of a tray. That's a system of thinking. If I know a tray is dirty and that's where I start, then the next place I got to go is decontam because I have to clean it. The next place I got to go is processing because I have to inspect it and make sure that it's working properly. I have to pack it and make sure it's ready for sterilization. Then I take it to sterilization and I sterilize it. Then I take it to sterile storage and I store it. Then I take it back to the patient and I use it. If I understand that system, if at any point I have an issue, I should be able to look back and figure out which one of these pieces of these parts affected me. Okay, so that's what that leadership skill is talking about. You learning the stages of these processes and then being able to be an independent thinker on the floor. All right. So we talked about high temp sterilization, which is when we're 270 degrees or above. Let's talk about low temp sterilization. This is chapter 10 of the CRCST, my 7th edition. It might be a slightly different chapter for y'all if y'all in the 9th. So I talked about how we can use high temp on heat stable instruments, but if the instrument is a camera or a scope or something that's covered in a plastic and it cannot handle high temp, low temp is my only other option. Now, that being said, unlike high temp where I had pre-vac and I had gravity displacement and them was my options, low temp, because we're using chemical sterilants, you have so many more options, okay? The biggest one, though, is going to be hydrogen peroxide. That's the one you guys are going to use the most often in SPD is steam and hydrogen peroxide. But that being said, all other chemical sterilants will be on your test. Okay? Don't come back here telling me I didn't tell you that. So you're going to need to have a card for what ETO is, what ozone is. You're going to want to be familiar. But on the floor, it's going to be mostly steam and hydrogen peroxide. That being said, I wouldn't want to be the person that didn't bother to study those and I get to the one place that still got an ETO sterilizer and I don't know what they're talking about. Okay? So those are going to be your alternatives. These are chemicals. Hydrogen peroxide, most of us should be familiar with, right? Alcohol and hydrogen peroxide. ETO is that ethylene oxide, and then ozone is another chemical sterilant. With this, you have to make sure with both types, you have to make sure, but especially with low temp sterilization, the material compatibility of your items is so critical. And what am I talking about when I say that? When you package your instruments, whether it's in a container, whether it's in a pill pack, whether it's in a ChemGuard wrap, it is, some of them are specifically for high temp and some of them specifically for low temp, and some of them can go both places, okay? You have to make sure you're using the right thing. Just like those instruments earlier I showed you that I sterilized them both sitting up against each other and all my parameters passed, so I think I'm good. But because I took this test and I'm a systems thinker, I know that this space in between did not get exposed. Same thing is going to come into a factor here. If you put your low temp sterilizer products into a high temp sterilizer wrap, the machine's probably going to run the same. It might not fail on you. It might run the cycle. But because you certified, because you trained, you know that material itself is not compatible. Therefore, you might have compromised your sterility. Okay, that might look like sterilant wasn't able to get through properly or wasn't able to get out properly. Either way it goes, I ain't no chemist. That's why I check on my parameters, right? And that's why I make sure that I use only approved materials. That will be critical for you on the floor. Sterilant penetration is an issue. You just heard me say that. All of this stuff, right, whether it's a chemical or steam, it has to push through several layers of product in order to get to your instrument, right? Because either I have it in a metal container with filters and it has to move through those filters, or I have it in a pill pack and it's got to move through that polyurethane, or I have it in a wrap and it's got to move through the ChemGuard. Part of that heating up process is making it so that packaging can absorb that sterilant, and then that cool down is so it closes back up. You can think of it the same way you think about your skin. Hopefully I ain't teaching somebody something today they didn't know on this part. But when you take your skin and you put it under hot water, all of your skin cells are going to open up a little bit more, right? They're heated up. Same thing for your hair. You put it in hot water, hair follicles are going to open up. Then in order to close them, I want to put a cool rinse. I want to put a cool rinse on my skin or a cool rinse on my hair. That's going to have those cells close back down. Okay. It's going to be the same thing for sterilant penetration. When I heat it up a little bit, it's easier for me to get that steam or that sterilant penetrating through that material. And then they usually have some type of cool down or drying process. Study notes here. Hydrogen peroxide plasma is used for moisture and heat sensitive devices. Especially when it comes to hydrogen peroxide and almost every chemical sterilant, because these are chemicals, we don't want to introduce more water, because water is also a chemical, right? We use that. We make up 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, right? Did I say that right? H2O2, 2 parts oxygen. Hydrogen 2 parts, oxygen 2 parts. Water is a chemical. If I'm using hydrogen peroxide and then I introduce water that has 2 hydrogen molecules, I'm going to have a chemical reaction. I'm going to change the way that those chemicals are reacted to each other. So most hydrogen peroxide machines, they will not function in the presence of water. If I put some instruments in there and they're still a little bit moist, that machine will alert and say, excuse you, you lost your mind, okay? It won't say that, but it will alarm and it will say moisture, some type of error that is related to the moisture. And the thing that sucks about that, let's say you put multiple instruments in that sterilizer, you don't know which one it is. Now you got to repackage all your stuff until you figure out which one ain't quite dry. Okay, so it just sucks. It might cause you a delay in your patient care too. Let's say waiting on me, and I'm over here taking my time trying to figure out what's going on with this machine. Okay, all right. Another thing about hydrogen peroxide when it comes to heat sensitive devices and all chemical sterilants is, remember, guys, these are chemicals that can affect you too. So there's going to be guidance for you to wear gloves when you're taking things in and out of these machines. You don't want to be exposing your skin to hydrogen peroxide or ozone, right? Make sure you're using the proper safety, your proper PPE when you're handling this stuff. Okay, and then ETO. A thing to remember about ETO or ethylene oxide is that it requires up to 12 hours of aeration. Now, what is that? Aeration is the exhaust. All of your chemical sterilants, again, these are chemicals, they're putting off fumes. Those fumes have to be aerated or exhausted out of the room, out of the hospital, okay? So that's where a lot of your parameters about air exchanges will come from. because we have to change the air out in our hospital setting to get rid of all the germs and all the chemicals and all the things that we're exhausting in there. Okay. ETO, when I put a a surgical instrument into a steam sterilizer, roughly 90 minutes, and I get to take it back out. When I put an instrument into a hydrogen peroxide sterilizer, roughly an hour, I get to take it back out. If I put an instrument into an ETO sterilizer, it will sterilize in about 90 minutes, but then it has to stay in there for 12 hours and exhaust all of that chemical sterilant in order to make it safe for you and your patient to handle. Okay, so it's something to think about. You don't see ETO on the floors as much these days, but that being said, facilities still do have them. Okay, and then what you have to know is that once you put that instrument in there, you ain't getting it back till tomorrow. Okay, that might be critical information for your physicians. It might be critical information for your care teams to know that, hey, once I start the process on this, guys, you won't get it back for another 12 to 13 hours. Any questions on that? Y'all quiet over there, YouTube. Y'all know I get nervous when y'all quiet. Any questions over there? Let me know. Okay, key terms about sterilization. You are going to want to be familiar with sterility assurance levels by definition, okay? This is what we call SAL for short. This is the probability of a non-sterile item. Basically, how do I explain this? What's the best way to explain this? When I say the probability of a non-sterile item. So I've pushed all these surgical instruments into the sterilizer. What is the probability that when I take one of them out, it's not sterile? The probability for that should be extremely low, right? If I'm following all my parameters. So what the sterility assurance level will offer you is what we call log reductions. And assuming that I have 100% log full of germs on my instrument, I should continuously see that load reduced as it is exposed to sterilant. It should be getting more and more dead, right? Killing off more and more of that percentage. So by the time I get to the end, I should have a sterile assurance level of 1 in a million or a log reduction of 10 to the -6. All that being said, put it on a flashcard, memorize it, take the test, and then no one will ever ask you about an SAL again. Okay? Okay. And the key thing, especially for system thinking that you want to remember about that, is you're reducing the log. You're reducing the load of germs that are on this thing, reducing the log. Key term in here is exposure phase. So the exposure phase is when the sterilant comes in contact with the instruments. That is when it is actually being exposed in the sterilizer. The sterilizer cycle is going to be a series of phases, like when we pull that air out, when we introduce the steam or the sterilant, when we exhaust or we cool down, right? So each machine is going to have several phases, but the exposure phase is where your instruments are coming in contact with your instrument, when your sterilant is coming in contact with your surgical instruments. That's going to be a key parameter for you to know because it's one of your parameters for your sterilization. Remember, time, temp, exposure, those are going to be some of the key things you need to know. So when I'm looking at my printout, if I was to look at it and see that my exposure phase was only 2 minutes, but I know that my instruments needed 4, that's going to be something to alert me that there's a problem here. No, friend, I guess technically it is. So it's not I'm not doing another round of the class, the entire CRCST class for free, but that they should have got in where they fit in on that one, friend. They had to be with us in February for that one. But this is the last session of the free study hall. That being said, since you brought it up, if you head over to the Candray Institute YouTube page and you go to the live section, the free class is still available if you want to self-study and take the exam. Also, all 4 sessions of the study hall are still there. I haven't had the heart to take them down yet, friend. Okay, so test taking tip. Low temp sterilization equals lower heat, but it can often be a longer process because, again, steam is just going to kill faster. So I don't have to expose as long. I don't have to dry as long. I don't have to exhaust as long when I'm dealing with steam. Okay. It also is going to have more what they call handling precautions. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where I want you guys to have gloves on when you're dealing with your chemical sterilants, because if something got left over, didn't get exhausted properly, you could get a chemical burn. And I've had one. I've had a hydrogen peroxide chemical burn. It wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't super painful, but it did make my skin turn white, and I didn't like it. Okay. I most definitely didn't like it. You're welcome. TikTok said, thank you for keeping this on YouTube. I really appreciate it. You're welcome. I'm trying to hold it up there at least until I get ready to launch my next paid class. I figure then why not? But y'all have access to it. If you want to take the exam with it, I highly suggest you buy the 9th edition book from my HSPA. If you follow my videos, you will see that I am using the 7th edition. So it's a little outdated, but all the same core information. And of course, if you have questions, you are more than welcome to contact me. My email is on that website. It should be on the YouTube too. That's candray.institute@gmail.com. Okay. So when we get those instruments sterilized, how do I monitor and make sure that it happened, right? Because I'm saying it again, I can't get in there and see if everything's cool. So how do I know that it happened, and how do I record that for my governing bodies? There may be surveyors that come in that want to see your sterilization records. They want to look and see, what are you doing? Are you following the proper process? Are you hitting all the proper parameters? You might also have different departments ask you for this information, like infection control. Sometimes infection control needs to report out on how much instrumentation sterile processing is dealing with, how much is storing, cleaning, sterilizing at any given time. It might also, infection control might also be very interested in what they call IUSS, or immediate use steam sterilization. And IUSS is a type of steam sterilization that we do in emergency situations. Hey, Deja. So in an emergency situation where I need an instrument to be sterilized, like right now, my patient is on a table, I cannot wait, but I dropped this thing on the floor. It's not clean, right? It's not sterile. They will use IUSS, or immediate use steam sterilization, to get that instrument into the sterilizer, sterilized, and then back to the surgeon as quickly as possible. And the way that is achieved is that we cut the dry times. So all that cooling down, all that drying that we would normally do in order to seal that package back up, we don't do any of that for IUSS, because that instrument is going to go straight from that sterilizer into that surgeon's hands, okay? So you will, regardless though of what type you're doing, you're going to be monitoring it the same way. Okay, so if it could be a mechanical, it could be a mechanical process that we're monitoring, it could be a chemical process that we're monitoring, but regardless, we're going to be making notes about what it is. Okay, and a lot of times those notes are going to include those parameters. So how long, what was the time exposure, how long was it exposed, dry time. It might ask you, especially for what was in there. What'd you sterilize? What'd you put in that machine? Think about it like this. A lot of times I give y'all the example of if I'm doing 5 total knees, right? If I'm doing 5 total knee surgeries today, but I only have setups for 4, that means that 5th patient is waiting on instrumentation from that 1st patient in order for that case to go live. So when case 1 breaks down, comes to SPD, I'm on it. Okay, I'm getting that case card broke down. I'm getting it sterilized, because I got 3 cases to go, and they're going to be calling me for that instrumentation. Now, that being said, let's say patient number 5, something went wrong with the sterilization cycle, but Alessandra didn't note it down right. They used the instruments. Surveyor came through, looked at the information, the records, and realized that a mistake was made. Now we need to trace that instrument tray back to the patient. How do we trace the instrument tray back if I don't make lists of what I put into the machine loads? We just won't know, right? So you have to record all of that information. And last thing I want to say about those records, those are legal records, okay? Once you record that sterilizer temp, time, and exposure, once you put what instruments you put in that sterilizer, you do your little initials, and you say that the biological indicators and the chemical indicators have passed, that is now an official legal record for that hospital, okay? So you may be called into a case once in a while to answer a question or two. Now, in my 16 years, never had had it happen to me, but I have seen it happen to colleagues. I've also, just as a note of different ways to make money in this industry, I also know of people that once they've gone on and had their career, like somebody like myself, after I've been putting in 16 years as a tech and a manager, I done worked the conference floor, I've been all over the place. I might turn around and work as a consultant for a legal case to help other people break down what happened in these situations. If you were in the class, part of one of your assignments was you had to go find a news story about sterilization failing in the public and what happened. What went wrong? Did the machines break down? Did the storage break down? What was it? Okay. I'll show you guys what a biological indicator looks like and how it is interpreted. The best way I can show you that is to have you go over to YouTube and look those up. Okay, I really tried to figure out a good way to do that, but I really couldn't. But what I do want to show you, without showing y'all pictures of other people's stuff, which I can't do now that it's my business. That's the only reason why. Otherwise, I would show you 1,000 pictures of biological indicators. But what I was able to do is put together this little cheat sheet. So I'm going to show you guys that. And this has the classes on it. Okay, so we talked about there were different classes of chemical indicators. I'm going to show y'all a little cheat sheet for that. Okay, then I have to go here and I click on this one. Okay, now make it bigger for y'all. Okay, so as part of the study hall series, I put this little guide together for y'all. This is giving you the chemical indicators classes 1 through 6 and just a real quick example of what does it monitor and when would you use it. Okay, on your tests, this will be. On your tests, this will be. They're going to ask you questions about each one of these classes in some way, shape, or form. And they should, because these are the ways that you guys monitor whether or not these sterilization cycles actually were effective. Okay, so class 1 indicators, these are going to be things like your visual tapes. They're going to monitor the process exposure, so the time. These might be chemical tapes that change because they've been in the sterilizer for 5 minutes. They might be also chemical tapes that change because the temperature was above 275 degrees. Does it tell you by itself that the sterilization cycle was effective? No, but it tests one of your parameters. So you're able to use that tape as a monitor. Also, your partners will use that tape as a monitor. When you send it off to the operating room, because they know even less, right, about sterilization. They didn't take this test. They didn't take this test. But one of the things they use is, did it color change? Because if that tape changed, that's a monitoring tool that they can use to see where the parameters met. Okay. So things like your autoclave tape, your low temp, high temp tape that you use to wrap your surgical instruments, that will be considered a class 1 indicator. Class 2 indicators are going to monitor the equipment performance. What am I talking about? Okay. If I'm talking about sterilization, what type of equipment am I talking about? Sterilizers, right? So this is going to test out whether or not your sterilizer is functioning properly. One of the uses that we see this in when it comes to steam is what we call a Bowie-Dick test. So a Bowie-Dick test is going to be an indicator that you use to see if your sterilizer is pulling a vacuum properly or not. Okay. Again, I can't get in there and see that it pull a vacuum, but I can put a test pack in there. I can close the door. I can press start. I can open the door and I can read the results of the test and see, did I have the exposure that I was looking for? A class indicator number 3. This is going to be an indicator that tests one parameter of your machine. So for instance, this one I put up here as far as internal packs, this one was looking for temp. We don't use these very much anymore. Reason why is because they're usually included in a higher level pack. So instead of you having one indicator that tests temp, it might be a part of a pack that tests temp, time, and exposure. Class level 4. These are going to be indicators that measures 2 or more parameters. So like a time and temp measurement, or a time and pressure measurement, or a temp and pressure measurement, right? That's going to be a class 4. Class 5, and the one that you're going to use most often, is what we call an all critical parameters monitor. This indicator is going to have some form of a test for every single one of your major parameters. It will usually have some type of tape or chemical color change product in it. It will also have a biological, some type of germ that lives inside of it that is safe for humans, but that is alive. And so the whole point of it is I put it into the sterilizer and it should be dead. So when I take the test pack out and I put the biological indicator in the incubator, eventually I should get a negative response because it killed all the germs with the steam. Last one is a class 6. That's another one that does all parameters, but class 6, even though it does test all critical parameters, it's usually cycle specific. So like a dynamic air removal specific or a pre-vac specific. And it will have exact cycle verifications, okay? So those are the different types of classes that you can have. I would suggest making a flashcard for that because it will come up on your test to some degree, okay? And then oh Lord, did I just close them? I think I did. No, I didn't. Oh, StreamYard, I thought I closed y'all whole thing. Latoya said, oh, Latoya! Hi! So Latoya is in class on YouTube. She said she's from the original Hillman Talk class. Hi! Latoya. What happened? No, friend. So Latoya put up here, I missed my opportunity for my certificate. Oh, man. No, you didn't. Okay? So for my Hillman Talk folks, you didn't miss anything. All you have to do is turn in the final assignment, which was that essay about some type of sterilization going wrong in the newspaper, and you talk about how you're going to prevent those situations from taking place. If you missed it, Latoya, just go to the file section on the website. The final assignment is up there. You can turn that in at your convenience, my love. All right? So that's what you got to do, that paper. Okay, you got to do that homework. So go ahead and head over to the Candray website, go to the file share section, and find the instructions for that final assignment. Once you turn it in, I have a certificate for you. And if anybody else is holding on that, because I know 2 other people turned it in. Look, y'all, we had a class of 15 people for free. They came every week from February to April. 15 people. 2 people turned in the essay. Latoya, you better be number 3. That's what I know. All right. And that was for a certificate of completion. That does not certify you. You still have to take that test, right? But that was for a certificate of completion. Oh, wait, I got to get that window back up. All right, so let's get back into the notes for today. And look, if y'all are just joining, if you head over to YouTube and you look in the live section, the free class that Latoya took is still available. All you would need to do is purchase a book for yourself and study. Also, all 4 sessions of this study hall series are still available on the YouTube section in the live. What you say now? She said, I was chasing that bag. I ain't mad at it. Get after it. Get after it. And that's why I left it open for y'all, because I knew y'all were doing a little bit of everything coming into that class. So it's on you. You like I told y'all, it's your class. You want to turn that essay in, you turn it in when you feel like it. If you don't want it, don't do it. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about when it comes to sterilization is your routine for releasing a load. Okay. When your sterilization cycle is done, you will document that information. You're going to document that those parameters were met. You would have already documented what's going into the machine at the start of the cycle. So you have that information. You're going to attach the printout that comes with it. Or for some of y'all that are going to be in fancy facilities, it's going to be in a computer system that talks to each other. But you're going to be the one responsible for making sure that printout is there. It did show up right before you close that documentation out. And so everything has passed. It's safe to use. It's safe to store. It's cooled down enough that it's safe to handle. What's my process to release this stuff? And it's just that. These instruments have cooled down enough that they're safe to handle. All of my tests have passed. My chemical tests have passed. My biological indicator test has passed. This is now a safe instrument set for you to handle. That's when I know it's ready to be released, either to sterile storage or to wherever it's going to live, whether that's a case car or up to the operating room, so on and so forth. The only time that you're able to shortcut that in any way is when you're using immediate use steam sterilization, which should not be on a regular basis because it should be for emergencies. Okay. That being said, you might see a lot of it on your floors. A lot of hospitals still use it because they just haven't purchased enough instruments to handle the workload that they do. And that's not advised. It's actually very much not advised by Joint Commission, but they get away with it. I've been in the field 16 years. I ain't never seen nobody get cited for it. Study notes for this chapter. Mechanical monitoring, that's going to be when you literally physically look at something. When you mechanically use your body to look at something, that's what we call mechanical monitoring. So that's going to be when you are looking at the readouts, or you're checking the pressure gauges, you're reading the receipt off the machine to see that the time, exposure time meet what you needed to meet, are the pressure parameters where they're supposed to be. You are mechanically, physically monitoring. A chemical indicator, that's going to be that color change based on the sterilant exposure. Okay, so when it comes to chemical indicators, they're usually going from light to dark. Like you'll have a tape that's a light brown color or a light blue color, whatever it is you're using. And then when you put it into the machine, the color change will usually show up as something like a dark black or a dark brown. So it's very clear to your eye that the color did change. If it looks light, splotchy, like it wasn't complete, that is a indicator to you through your mechanical monitoring that maybe there was a problem with one of the parameters of your sterilization cycle. Okay, that's the way it's meant to alert you. Lastly, biological indicators. Those are those little BI vials that contain actual germs, actual spores. The name of that spore, I do not remember off the top of my head, and y'all forgive me because it is going to be on your test somewhere, so do be familiar with it. It's going to be in your book. But the thing to remember about that spore is it's safe for human contact. So if for whatever reason that vial was to break and spill on you, you would not be in any type of harm's way. But we use it because we're able to keep that little jar of bugs alive, little jar of germs alive, put it into the sterilizer and test to see, did the sterilizer kill it? If I put it in there at 270 degrees, or I put it into the low temp machine and I expose it to hydrogen peroxide and I take it back out and I incubate it and the test comes back positive and says, Alessandra, there are still germs in here, then I know that all of the surgical instruments in that load are now not safe to handle. I cannot release them. Okay. So that's another, when I talked about what's your release routine, it's another reason why you want to be in the habit of holding your instrumentation until all of your testing is complete. The last thing you want to do is have to do a recall. But that being said, since I'm on the topic, let me just say this. There are times where you're going to have to recall your sterilizer load. There are times where you have allowed it to go off into the world, into its departments. You have figured out at the back end that something was wrong, and you now need to have every department send those instruments back to you immediately. That is what we call a recall. I do not ever want you guys to be afraid to do one, even though it is cumbersome, and even though it do make you look a little like you don't know what you're doing out here in the field. You know what I mean? But sometimes it has to happen. Never allow for unsafe surgical instruments to be out and about on the floors, because here's the thing. The only people that have the knowledge that you guys have are you. Nobody else in the hospital gets trained to the level that you get trained when it comes to sterilization, cleaning, and disinfection. No one. Not a surgeon, not a circulating nurse, not a scrub tech, not an infection control nurse. I'm telling you, in my 16 years, I've trained them all when it comes to how to clean and decontaminate and sterilize instruments. You are the subject matter expert about this. So don't be afraid to take control of the situation if it needs it, okay? That's a leadership focus. Key times out of that sterilization information. I know I'm a little over. If y'all got to go. I'm going to finish my notes out, though, since I came in late. I'm going to keep going. But if you got to go, I understand. Key terms for sterilization: PCD, or process challenge device. You're going to want to learn it both ways. The acronym will show up just as often as the full name. PCD is a process challenge device, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It challenges the process of sterilization. It challenges the parameters. So it's going to be the test pack that has the chemical indicator in there, the biological indicator in there. Those are going to be the ones you put into the machine, and then you're going to open that pack up at the end of the cycle and see, did I get a color change, and did I kill all the germs in this BI? Okay, so process challenge device will be on your test. That's a test pack with a BI placed in the worst case load location. What does that mean? Okay. We talked about loading that sterilizer. You can only fit so much instrumentation in there. Also, something to be aware of that might not necessarily come up on your test, but will come up in the field. Sterilizers have a load, a weight limit. You can't just put hundreds of pounds of surgical instruments into a machine, even if they fit. So those are all things you're going to want to be aware of by reading that instructions for you, so that the user manual. Now, when you put the process challenge device in there, we talked about earlier that there were two methods that steam sterilizers use to move the air out the machine so they can put the sterilant in. One of them was a gravity displacement. One of them was the air vac, where I suck all the air out the machine, okay? Now, that being said, because I'm moving that air out, it has to have somewhere to go to. For your gravity displacement, it's going to be a drain at the bottom. For your air or your dynamic air removal, excuse me, I said that backward. For your pre-vac, it's going to be some drains at the bottom. The gravity displacement is going to be some drains at the bottom. So when it comes to your toughest place for sterilant to reach, it's going to be somewhere around them drains, because that's where it's got to work the hardest to get down to, if that makes sense. So when it comes to a test pack, you want to put your test pack right there. Put it over the not on the drain, but on the sterilizer rack above the drain, because that's going to be the hardest place for sterilant to reach. If my process challenge device pass the test from the place that's the hardest to reach in the sterilizer, that is another way for me to know that most likely everything in here got touched. Okay. So process challenge devices are going to go in the worst possible location of your sterilizer. And that just means, where is it the hardest for the sterilant to reach? Class 5 integrators. Class 5 is your chemical indicator that mimics BI performance, okay? So another note to add for your chemical indicators. Class 5s, they mimic that BI performance. And that BI is short for biological indicator. That's that little vial that has the germs in it. And then lastly, immediate use steam sterilization. That's IUSS. Just like PCD, process challenge device, IUSS, you're going to want to learn the term, and you're going to want to know the acronym, and you're going to want to know what it means, because it will show up in different ways. Something about this that I want to make y'all aware of. Back in the day, back when I first started, immediate use steam sterilization used to be called flash sterilization. Flash meaning we do it fast. We do not call it that anymore. We now use the term immediate use steam sterilization. That being said, in the field, you may come across the term flash. That's what they're talking about, is IUSS, or immediate use sterilization. And remember, this is a sterilization that we're doing because it's an emergency. Surgeon needs instruments back right now. So I'm not going to wrap them up the same way that I would wrap up my instruments that are going to be stored. I'm also not going to dry them for as long, and they're going to go straight from the sterilizer to the operating room. Test taking tips with this one. If a question asks, what is the best proof of sterility? The answer is always going to be your monitoring tools, which is your biological indicators. And your biological indicator specifically as a monitoring tool, because it's the one that has the live germs in it. So it's going to be the one that can best tell you if everything was killed. All right, y'all. I see questions on TikTok. Woo! Latoya said, will you do a quick instrumentation class? For you, Latoya, I'll do it. I'll leave it on for next Monday. We'll hold the same time, 4:45. And because Latoya asked, I'll do 4:45 next week. We'll do a quick overview of instrumentation. Now, for that one, what I will do is I will bust out my Google photo file of all the instruments that, baby, I done snapped so many instruments, pictures of instruments for different stuff. So I'll bust that out too, so you guys can see what instruments look like really on the floor, but I'll find some resources too for y'all to use on y'all end, okay? Like some YouTube videos or something for you to look at. I'll put that together. Since Latoya asked about that too, I just want to take the time to remind y'all, Once you get your CRCST, once you get your CBSPD, whichever one you're going for, both of those offer additional certifications. And one of the specialties you can get is certified instrument specialist. Okay. And what happens when you get a certified instrument specialist is what it's saying is that one, you can identify, I think it's about 100 surgical instruments, but also you know how to check them for workability, and you know how to clean them. You know how to keep them in a safe, functioning order. Okay. So that's something that you can go ahead once you get your CRCST, get your books, start studying for your CIS, take the test. Okay. You're welcome. Yes, Chris said these notes from you talking about the study hall notes, they will be on the website, y'all. I'm gonna sit down tonight and just put them up there, especially since this is the last day. I love you too, Pumpkin. I love you too. I want y'all to be successful. It's really important to me that y'all are able to use this information and go get a job. That was my whole, when that little Hillman Talk thing went viral and everybody said they wanted free education, I said, okay, y'all sure? Because I'll train you, but is you gonna go get a job? I'll tell you, one of the things that my leaders that are in my space, like in my podcast space, they don't like when I say free. They don't like when I talk about free stuff, because their general feeling, and I ain't saying they wrong, but their general feeling is when you offer somebody something for free, they don't value it. They don't take it seriously because they didn't pay for it. And I personally do think that a lot of people will take advantage of stuff, right? If you offer it to them for free, if I put 100 bottles of water out on the table and they're free, somebody gonna come along and grab one for themselves, but somebody else gonna come along and grab 12, put 2 in the trunk, right? That's just people. But when it comes to something like this, a knowledge-based service, the only way that Latoya is gonna pass this test is if she watch all them videos about that class, buy that book and read it and take the test. There's no way for her to devalue what I have offered to her for free. Okay. If somebody chooses not to use it, they just choose not to use it. That's it. All right. So I that's my philosophy. And especially when it comes to sterile processing, I personally would love to see the industry's integrity rise. I feel like I've worked in the Midwest, I've worked in California, I've worked in Alabama, I've worked in Massachusetts, I've been everywhere. What I find is that people will take this test, and these are people that have gone to classes. They will take this test and they will get that job, and then they will treat it like it's not important. Like these are not surgical instruments going into people's bodies. And they kind of get away with it. Because let's think about it. Once I sterilize that surgical instrument and they go use it in that room, baby, ain't nobody calling me no more. My work here is done. Patient goes home. They don't have no more need for me. But if that patient ends up with a surgical site infection, that could potentially be because of me. I might not ever get in trouble for that. I might not ever even get found out about that. But it's because of me. I take it that seriously. Every single instrument, every single patient, every single time. Pay attention. So that was another one of my motivations was, if I have people here that say they want to get this information, they want to go get this job, and they have high integrity, then I will give you the information so you guys can be successful. I can host 1,000 classes. I'm going to get paid. Okay, I have coaching clients right now. I'm going to make my money. I thought this was something nice that I could offer, and it overjoyed me to see the 15 women show up every week from February to May. I was shocked. All right, Chrisette said, "What do you think about surgical tech?" Okay, let me tell you, and look, I'm putting on my sterile processing tech hat. I am not a surgical tech. I have never worked in the operating room. I go in there sometimes, but I've never had to live in there. So take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. I think when you are a sterile processing tech, one of the things you can do, don't have to do, but can do, is potentially look at becoming a surgical tech. Now, why would you do that? Here's some reasons why you might do that. One, it makes you more marketable. I ain't never been in a peri-op director's office, and usually sterile processing departments are under surgical services. So our bosses, we have sterile processing managers, but our bosses at the top of the department are usually peri-op directors. Excuse me, and peri-op directors are usually nurses. Okay, AKA, they did not take this test. You are the subject expert of this. They are the subject matter expert of all things operating room. Okay. Surgical or RNs love to see people that are dual certified because it means you can do both things. So it means you're going to be a jack of all trade. My scrub tech called out. It's okay. Chrisette is here. She's a CRCST Monday through Friday, but she does have her CST certification, so I can pop her in there. Another reason why they like it is because you have a wider body of knowledge. So not only do you know the CRCST side, which is how do I clean, decontaminate, sterilize, find workability, store, but you also have the operating room side where you understand how to aseptically hand off, where you understand how to maintain sterility that the people then put together for you so your patient is safe, right? You're learning how procedures work. You're learning the order of the surgical instruments that the physician might want them in, right? So that's putting that body of knowledge together just makes you a double threat. Another thing that I think is a benefit of it, if you choose to do both, is it makes you more marketable when it comes to travel positions. So if any of you are interested in becoming travelers, you can absolutely 100% travel as a sterile processing tech, and you can 100% travel as a CST. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about both of them, you're going to make more money as a CST. You're going to make more money as a CST. Depending on where you at, it might be $1 or $2, might be $4 or $5. It just depends on where you are. But I can almost guarantee you that you will not be at the same rate as an SPD tech. So, food for thought. Okay. Over on TikTok, they said videos on YouTube. Yes, ma'am. I'm thinking of going back to school for SPT. Do it. Look, get your book while you can. That class is still free and still live. The way my schedule is looking, I'm probably not going to get around to another paid class until August. I was hoping to have one ready for June, but this June is kicking my butts. And July is already full. So there's that. You are very welcome, my love. You are very welcome. I've seen some SPD, CRCST dual certified folks that have been able to travel and just, again, make more money because they're able to do both roles, or they're able to bring both bodies of knowledge to whatever singular role that they're in. And I don't know about y'all, but I love to have my money be diversified. Let me make money two ways if I can make money two ways. I'm going to do that. All right. So back to these notes. And if y'all got more questions, just drop them in the chat. Okay. So we talked about sterility assurance levels, which is that log reduction. We also talked about ethylene oxide. Ethylene oxide is another chemical sterilant we use in low temp. And that's that one that is long and slow to exhaust. It is very toxic, which is why you don't see as many hospitals using it anymore. A lot of times when it comes to ethylene oxide sterilization, that's something that's going to be done at a manufacturer's level. So think about like sterile gauze or sterile gloves, sterile gowns. They will have much larger machines they'll push those products into, and then they'll use ethylene oxide. And they have the benefit of being able to wait for 14 hours while it does its exhaust, because they're selling those products to hospitals and they're not necessarily stocking an independent operating room like you guys are. Okay, you are manufacturing, but you're only manufacturing for your hospital or your hospital sites. I know a couple people dropped some terms in there, but I'm going to just say it again. If you have key terms from that book that you're confused about, drop them in the chat. I'll do the best of my ability. Study notes for session 4 of Ready, Set, Sterilize Study Hall. That dynamic air removal, process challenge devices. You're going to want to know the difference between your integrators, your classes, okay? And you're going to want to know the difference between your indicators. Notice that those are two different words, okay? You're going to want to know the difference. Test taking tip. Color-coded flashcards help you with your memory. If you are able to, I know some of y'all have already gone through and made your flashcards. If you're able to, I highly suggest using a certain color for the different terms based on which pillar you're looking at. So if that's sterilization, maybe all my sterilization notes are purple. All my decontam notes are red. All my sterile storage notes are green. It's just another tip that you can use to help your brain encode this information. Not required, something to help you, okay? What is required with them flashcards, though, you got to study them. Don't just make them and then put them in your purse. You have to study them. And then the last thing I want to say about that when it comes to leadership skills, asking for help is a leadership skill. Asking for support is a leadership skill. I want you guys to find somebody to help you study your flashcards. Have them hold them up and test you. Don't be embarrassed to not know the answers in front of them. You're learning. That's the whole point. With the flashcards, as you go and you're memorizing them, the faster that you're able to recall that information, the more that it's sinking into your brain. Okay, so when somebody flip that flashcard over and you don't know it immediately, that's not a failure. That's just indicating to you that you need to keep studying that card until you can boop 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 boop. Okay, it's going to help you tremendously on the exam. All righty. Any other questions for me? You are very much welcome, Miss Chrisette. Any other questions for me? I do want to remind you guys, if you're taking the CRCST exam through myhspa.org, you will need to fill out an application with them and submit that and pay your fee. They will send you a number back that you will use to set up your test date with Prometrics, and that is how you will get your ability to test for the CRCST. If you're doing it through CBSPD, the next testing window is in August, and I do believe July 29th is the application deadline. So absolutely go over to that website and make sure that information is accurate, because the last thing you want to do is be studying and studying and studying for a test in August and then miss the application deadline, okay? I ain't laughing at you. I'm just laughing at you. All right. That's it. That's session 4 of the Study Hall series. So as far as the Hillman Top Kids is concerned, there is a free class that is still available on YouTube. If you go to the Candray Institute YouTube section, go to live. Everything that they had is there for you for free. You can buy your books. I believe they're on the 9th edition, and you can study that until I take it down. And baby, right now it's looking like probably about, like I said, probably late July, August before I take it down. Also, all 4 sessions of the Study Hall series are on the YouTube. So you can go back to the live section and you can look up the last 4 sessions of Ready, Set, Sterilize for your CRCST exam prep. And then, as if I ain't gave y'all enough stuff for free, if you go to the website, all of the class notes are in the file share section. They are available. Should you decide to self-study and go through the class and take the exam, there is a final assignment that is on the website. You do have to submit that if you want a certificate of completion from the Candray Institute. Okay, and thank you, Latoya, for reminding me of my commitment. Next Monday at 4:45, I guess I'll just make it a bonus session of Ready, Set, Sterilize. We will be back here at 4:45 CST. We're going to go over basic surgical instrumentation. Okay, we'll be back. All right, so I will see y'all in the meantime. I appreciate y'all so much for spending time with me and learning with me. If you could interact with the pages, thank you, TikTok. I see y'all tapping the screen. If you're over on YouTube, be sure to like, share, subscribe. The comments are also helpful. Share this with someone maybe that is trying to study for the exam. Interact with the TikTok pages, whatever you can do, whatever you have time for. I most greatly appreciate it. It is my absolute honor to be able to bring y'all this education. As y'all know, especially those of you that did my Hillman Top class, it is very near and dear to my heart to create high integrity technicians in this field. So whether you paid for it or not, that's not my concern. My concern is, do you know this information and do you practice it through the systems that you learn in order to keep your patients safe? Okay, so that's it. That's all I got. Thank you, Chrisette. Good night, y'all. I'll see y'all out there. And if you got questions for me, you need something from me in the in-between, head over to the website and drop me an email, candray.institute@gmail.com.